Ever walk into the store and feel like something's off? Shelves may look full at first glance, but scan a little closer. Certain items seem harder to find. Prices creeping higher every week. By the time you start noticing, the real issue is already gaining ground. Here's the catch. This isn't just about inconvenience. These changes signal a deeper shift, one many people aren't ready for. We're talking about 10 everyday foods that are quietly disappearing. These are not fancy extras or gourmet treats. These are the building blocks of meals, the staples you count on without a second thought. And when they're gone, it's more than a nuisance. It's a wake-up call. These foods aren't vanishing overnight, but piece by piece, they're slipping out of reach. Whether it's due to climate issues, shrinking resources, or supply chain strains, the reasons don't matter as much as the reality. What's really alarming is how little time there is to react once they're gone. This isn't the kind of thing you notice until it's too late, but understanding which foods are on the brink could make all the difference. Not just for your pantry, but for how you prepare for what's coming. Keep reading, because these aren't just foods we're losing, they're warnings. 1. Vinegar. Ever think about what would happen if vinegar just disappeared? It's easy to take for granted, that unassuming bottle on the shelf, always sitting there for just a few bucks. But that little bottle is a big deal. When the supply tightens, vinegar quietly vanishes, leaving problems no one saw coming. Why? Because vinegar isn't just for your salad dressings and marinades, it's a survivalist's dream tool. Need to preserve vegetables, clean surfaces, make your own condiments? Vinegar's got you covered. It's long-lasting, shelf-stable, and incredibly versatile, making it a go-to in everything from food preservation to DIY cleaning hacks. But here's the issue. Most commercial vinegar, particularly white distilled vinegar, starts with grain alcohol. And that alcohol? It comes from corn. If corn yields falter, the ripple effects spread quickly. To make it worse, a huge portion of corn gets diverted to ethanol fuel production nowadays. That creates a tug-of-war between food and fuel, leaving less for the vinegar we rely on. The challenges don't stop there. Many vinegar brands package in glass bottles. And guess what? There's a global glass shortage too. Between rising costs for natural gas and specialized sand, key ingredients for glass making, production has slowed. Even companies with plenty of vinegar sitting in tanks are helpless if they can't get it into bottles fast enough. When vinegar shortages hit, it's not just inconvenient, it's disruptive. Think about it. One product that cleans, preserves, and even contributes to baking becomes harder to find. It's no wonder prices are creeping up, with spot shortages appearing for white, apple cider, and even balsamic vinegar. This isn't about panicking, it's about seeing the writing on the wall. If you rely on vinegar for canning, cooking, or cleaning, this is your signal to stock up. That bottle you grab without a second thought? It might not be as easy to find tomorrow. 2. Lentils. Lentils don't grab headlines. They're not glamorous, they're not trendy, and you won't see anyone showing off their bulk lentil stash online. But here's the truth. Lentils are one of the most important foods you can have in your pantry. Loaded with protein, fiber, and key nutrients. They're shelf-stable, versatile, and incredibly cheap. That trifecta makes them an undeniable survival food, yet this humble legume is becoming harder to count on. The supply chain for lentils isn't as resilient as you'd think. Two nations, Canada and India, dominate the global production and export market. If something disrupts one of them, it creates a ripple effect around the world. Right now, both of these countries are facing their own challenges. Canada, which supplies roughly 40% of the world's lentils, has been grappling with severe droughts and erratic weather over recent seasons. This has led to smaller harvests and tighter supplies. Over in India, the world's largest consumer and producer of lentils, exports are frequently curtailed to preserve their own supply. That leaves the rest of the world scrambling. It doesn't stop there. Lentils are no longer just sitting quietly in the dried goods aisle. Thanks to the rise of plant-based diets, they're now in high demand for vegan snacks, meat substitutes, and prepackaged meals. Major food companies are scooping up lentils in bulk, driving prices up and draining availability for the everyday consumer. For millions of low-income households, particularly where meat is already unaffordable, lentils are a lifeline. If they disappear or skyrocket in price, the consequences will be devastating. Even in wealthier regions, lentils are a staple for preppers and budget-conscious shoppers alike. The lesson? Don't wait. Grab your lentils while you can. Stock up, store them properly, and keep them on hand. When lentils vanish from the shelves, it's about much more than filling your plate. It's a warning sign of deeper problems in the food supply chain. 3. Mustard. Mustard is one of those staples you don't think twice about. A quick squeeze on a hot dog or a dollop of Dijon in a recipe and it's there, reliable and cheap. But here's the shocker. Mustard is quietly slipping off shelves around the world, and the ripple effects are bigger than you'd expect. The trouble starts with mustard seeds, the key ingredient. Canada and France, two major producers, have faced back-to-back blows. Canada's mustard farms, particularly in drought-stricken Saskatchewan, have endured their worst harvests in decades. Meanwhile, France has grappled with scorching heat and minimal rainfall, cutting their yields significantly. Together, these countries supply much of the world's mustard seeds, but both pipelines are running dry. Unlike some crops, mustard seeds can't easily be replaced or sourced elsewhere. Commercial mustard production depends on specific varieties, and without them, production comes to a screeching halt. Factories are scaling back operations, running at reduced capacity, scrambling to pay inflated prices for limited seeds. All this while demand is surging. Since the pandemic, more people are cooking at home, whipping up recipes that frequently call for mustard. And don't forget the growing foodie trend around gourmet options like Dijon, honey, and stone-ground mustards. It's not just the classic yellow bottles in short supply. Specialty blends are feeling the strain too. Some brands have already taken varieties off shelves entirely. Others are quietly hiking prices, a sneak preview of what happens when a seemingly endless supply dries up. And because mustard isn't an everyday purchase for most, this creeping shortage largely goes unnoticed. If you see your favorite mustard still on the shelf, grab it, stock up. Because when mustard disappears, it's more than an empty aisle. It's a sign of deeper cracks spreading through the food system. 4. Cocoa powder. Cocoa powder might seem like a small luxury, something you use for a treat now and then. But if it suddenly disappeared, the impact would be far bigger than you think. Whether it's a rich hot cocoa on a cold night or baking the perfect batch of brownies, cocoa powder isn't just about flavor. It's about comfort and connection. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Around 70% of the world's cacao, the source of cocoa powder, comes from West Africa, particularly Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. These regions, vital to global supply, are hanging by a thread. Climate shifts, outdated farming, and poor infrastructure are making output increasingly unstable. Farmers are battling unpredictable weather, pests, and depleted soil, leading to lower yields every year. When supply from these key players shakes, it sends ripples around the globe. But the challenges don't stop at the farms. The process to transform cacao into cocoa powder is delicate and demanding. Beans need fermenting, drying, shipping, and grinding, all while fuel prices climb and supply chains falter. Factor in labor shortages and a growing demand from major food manufacturers, and it's no surprise prices are rising fast. This isn't just about economics, it's emotional. Cocoa powder is at the heart of so many comfort foods that feel grounding when life feels chaotic. That's why chocolate and cocoa are often called morale foods. They provide small moments of joy and sanity. For preppers and planners, cocoa powder is an underestimated staple. Properly stored, it lasts for years. Plus, it's lightweight, nutrient-dense, and adaptable. Mix it into oatmeal, whip up energy bars, flavored drinks, or create a sense of normalcy amidst uncertainty. But as supplies tighten, expect lower quality options and shrinking packages on store shelves. Don't wait until it vanishes to realize its value. Stock up now, because cocoa powder is more than a treat. It's balance, resilience, and a little slice of happiness when the world feels off-kilter. 5. Salt. Salt seems like one of those things that will always be around. It's cheap, plentiful, and never spoils. You likely pass by it at the store without a second glance. But here's the reality. If salt starts to disappear, the consequences will hit faster and harder than most people expect. And it's not just about sprinkling it on your food. Table salt is only a small part of the picture. Industrial salt is the real backbone here. It's essential for processed foods, cheese making, curing meats, canning, baking, and even purifying water supplies. Without it, everyday systems start to break down. The problem? Salt production relies heavily on large-scale mining and refining. Right now, some of the biggest salt mines in the world are slowing output. Why? A combination of labor strikes, spiking energy costs, and increasingly tight environmental regulations. Mining salt requires immense machinery, electricity, and groundwater usage. As governments clamp down on emissions and resource use, these operations are being forced to either scale back or hike prices. Moving salt doesn't get easier either. It's heavy, making transportation costly even in the best of times. Add in climbing fuel prices and ongoing shipping delays, and suddenly even getting salt from point A to point B becomes a challenge. Smaller companies are already feeling the strain, struggling to acquire the amounts they need. On the commercial side, big players are stockpiling by the ton, leaving retail shelves more vulnerable. If panic buying kicks in, salt could vanish overnight. Stockpiling salt may not sound exciting, but it's one of the smartest moves you can make. It's cheap, stores indefinitely, and isn't just for seasoning. Salt preserves foods, aids in sanitation, and could even become valuable for trade if shortages worsen. When it's this simple to prepare, why wait? A few extra bags now might save you a lot of trouble down the line. And once it's gone, you'll feel its absence everywhere. Salt doesn't just flavor our lives, it sustains them. 6. Yeast. Remember the early lockdown days when yeast vanished almost overnight? It wasn't just a minor inconvenience. Suddenly, baking bread or making pizza dough turned into a distant dream. And here's why that shortage wasn't a fluke. Yeast isn't like flour or sugar, where reserves can stockpile endlessly. Yeast is alive. It has to be carefully grown, handled, and transported under controlled conditions, especially for fresh or refrigerated types. That delicate process makes the supply chain particularly fragile. The truth is, only a handful of facilities produce the majority of yeast we all depend on, from commercial kitchens to home bakers. Any hiccup in the system, whether it's labor shortages, factory closures, or spiking fuel costs, disrupts production. Add in mounting demand thanks to more home baking, food-side businesses, and cost-saving DIY trends, and the pinch gets even tighter. Additionally, yeast logistics are no easy task. Fresh yeast and liquid starters need consistent refrigeration during transport and storage. Rising diesel prices, shipping delays, or disruptions like storms or strikes can knock the entire supply chain off balance. The real kicker? Yeast doesn't last forever. Dry yeast can survive for a year or two if stored properly, but fresh yeast has an even shorter shelf life. If you wait until store shelves are empty to take action, it's already too late. Without yeast, a whole list of essentials disappears. Bread, pizza crusts, dinner rolls, bagels, cinnamon buns, and more. It's not just about the inconvenience, it's about losing a key ingredient that transforms humble ingredients into everyday staples. If you bake even occasionally, now's the time to think ahead. Stock up on active dry or instant yeast and store it in a cool, dry spot. Consider vacuum-sealed yeast bricks for long-term prep. Yeast might be small, but its absence creates a massive ripple in your kitchen. When it's gone, bread stops being something you make and starts being something you hope to find. Be prepared before it's too late. 7. Honey. Honey might seem like a pantry staple, but real honey is slipping out of reach, and if you haven't noticed it yet, you will. The issue runs much deeper than simple supply and demand. The real problem? Bees are dying off at alarming rates. This isn't just bad news for honey lovers, it's a massive threat to the global food system. Bee populations have been in freefall for years due to pesticides, parasites, monoculture farming, and habitat destruction. Entire hives are vanishing in a phenomenon called colony collapse disorder. Without bees, honey production takes a hit, and so does the pollination of a third of the crops we eat, for foods like almonds, berries, and apples. When the bees go, food security starts to crumble. And even when honey is available, there's a growing problem with fakes. Many store-bought jars labeled honey are adulterated with corn syrup, rice syrup, or other fillers. Some are so filtered that they contain no traces of pollen, making it impossible to trace their origins. Worse, honey fraud has become a global issue. Fake or diluted honey is mass-produced and sold to retailers cutting into the market for real raw honey. Meanwhile, small-scale beekeepers struggle. These producers depend on healthy hives, but shrinking bee populations and big-gram competition leave them fighting an uphill battle. The result? Fewer sources for genuine honey, rising prices, and dwindling supplies. Small apiaries close, and there's no quick way to revive them. Beekeeping takes time, expertise, and a balanced environment. Luckily, honey is incredibly shelf-stabilized. Properly stored, it doesn't spoil, not even after thousands of years. It's more than a sweetener, it's a natural energy source, wound disinfectant, sore throat remedy and preservative. Perfect for prepping. Stock up now. A jar of honey isn't just food, it's a survival tool. Whether you spread it on bread, stir it into tea, or rely on it in emergencies, honey provides both nourishment and healing. Once it's gone for good. 8. Oats. Oats once held the reputation of being the modest breakfast choice, quietly dependable and always affordable. But in recent years, their status has skyrocketed. These days, oats aren't just for porridge anymore. They're the star ingredient in oat milk, the holy grail of non-dairy options, and a key player in gluten-free baking, protein bars, and trendy snack foods. However, this massive leap in popularity has exposed a glaring issue no one expected. The global oat supply chain simply isn't built to meet this kind of demand. To make matters worse, climate change has thrown the primary oat-growing regions, like Canada and Northern Europe, into chaos. Canada, one of the world's oat powerhouses, has faced relentless challenges. From late frosts to scorching heat waves and prolonged droughts, its prairie provinces have experienced repeated crop failures. Meanwhile, across Europe, nations like Sweden and Finland also wrestle with volatile weather patterns, rising costs, and cuts to farming subsidies. While crops struggle, demand continues to surge. Oat milk alone has soared in popularity, now rivaling almond milk as a leading dairy alternative. But here's the problem. Making just one glass of oat milk takes a full cup of oats, leaving producers scrambling to find enough supply. That's not all. Gluten-free foods, a booming market, depend heavily on oats. But to legally label oats as gluten-free, production requires specialized facilities, further complicating the supply chain. Throw in skyrocketing costs for fuel, fertilizer, and labor, and many farmers are shifting to more profitable crops, leaving oats behind. If oats become scarce, the effects ripple far beyond breakfast. It jeopardizes everything, from plant-based products to budget-friendly, high-fiber nutrition. For preppers, it's a real concern. Oats are a pantry powerhouse. They store easily, cook fast, and deliver lasting energy with minimal effort. If there's room on your shelf, start stocking up, because when oats vanish, it's not just milk and oatmeal you'll miss. It's a nutritional staple disappearing from our lives. 9. Dried fruit. Dried fruit might seem like a treat more than a necessity, but for preppers and savvy snackers, it's an absolute staple. Lightweight, shelf-stable, and packed with natural sugars, fiber, essential nutrients, it's the ultimate combination of portability and nutrition. That's why it's been a go-to for emergency kits and outdoor adventures for decades. But here's the catch. Even dried fruit isn't immune to supply chain challenges. The production of dried fruit relies on more than just sunshine and a long drying table. Industrial operations depend on power-hungry dehydrators, controlled temperatures, and consistent energy supplies. These systems are fragile, especially as energy costs spike and climate change worsens. Take California and Chile, for instance. Droughts, heat waves, and blackouts are slowing down crop production and forcing processing facilities to halt operations. Combine that with labor shortages in key growing regions like Turkey, South America, and the Middle East, and things start to unravel. Political instability and urban migration are pulling workers off orchards and away from packing plants, leaving fruit unpicked or unsorted when every second counts. And then there's climate change hammering crops. Late frosts, excessive rain, and prolonged droughts destroy harvests. Turkey, the world's largest dried apricot supplier, is already reporting shrinking yields, while water shortages are cutting into the Middle East's date production. But that's just the first hurdle. Once dried fruit is processed, it needs vacuum-sealed packaging and global shipping to reach your pantry. Port delays, container shortages, and steep fuel prices are turning reliable deliveries into risky bets. What used to be a straightforward supply chain is now riddled with uncertainty. The result? Rising prices, smaller packages, and disappearing inventory on store shelves. Dried fruit isn't just a snack. It's a survival superfood, loaded with calories and nutrients that last for years. If you spot your favorite dried fruits today, snag them, because once they're gone, they might not come back anytime soon. And when that happens, it won't just be a snack you're missing, it'll be an essential food in short supply.